All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is John Miller. I'm the Director of Marketing for Lead to Goals, and just want to take a quick minute to introduce our presenter today. Our presenter is Scott DeLong. He is an entrepreneur and a business owner. He's successfully built and exited 3 businesses. He is a lifelong learner, having earned a master's degree in leadership development at the age of 54, and he's also completed his doctorate in leadership studies. Scott has a strong passion for the work he does with Lead to Goals and in delivering the content that he has developed himself. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Scott DeLong.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be here with us. So this is a course that we've created out of necessity. One of my clients had told me that they've got people that have been promoted and haven't been trained. And then come to find out, quite a few organizations go through that process. And the training for leadership is lacking in the first-time promotion. And even after that, people that have been in management for a while come to find out haven't gone through much training and resources. And there's a lot of things, a lot of differences, as most of you know, between being an individual contributor and then being responsible for a project or a team or whatever. So this was created for that. What you're going to get today is probably 40 minutes of what we call a keynote presentation on leadership for the frontline manager, which was developed around a course that we teach to organizations and, in fact, individuals within a group setting. So first of all, congratulations on the promotion. And again, it's not just for the recently promoted, but folks that have been in a process, in a job and still don't understand. In fact, I had with this first client that asked us to create this, there was a vice president that was part of the team because they had grown so fast, and she just didn't get to catch up on some of the basic things, some of the hiring processes and some of the firing processes that you're going to have to start worrying about as a frontline manager. So I think one of the tasks for businesses is that we need to start preparing people for becoming a leader as a manager, and not just managing. There's a difference between leadership and management. There's a lot of overlap as well, but there is a difference between leadership and management. Management is making sure that things get done, and leadership is more getting people to want to get those things done. And we'll go through some of that during this. So we've broken this course down into 4 basic components: the understanding the roles and responsibilities for the new manager or manager has been trained, the need for communications and how to communicate better, getting the work done and the accountability that you need to hold people accountable for, and then understanding your role in the human resources arena, recruiting, hiring, training, firing, those sorts of things. So all those happen within this. Differences between manager and leader: manager's purpose-oriented, leader's task-oriented. I'm sorry, the other way around. Leader is purpose-oriented, manager is task-oriented. Leaders worry about improvement instead of execution, effectiveness instead of efficiency, change agents and instead of being risk-averse. They're coaches rather than trainers. They ask, they don't tell. They influence rather than try to manipulate and or motivate folks. They're inspirational, certainly, sets directions instead of give directions. People will follow them instead of people will work for them. So you see a bunch of differences between the leader and the manager. And what we're trying to do in this leadership role, although you need to learn how to become a manager as well, because things do need to get done, learning from a leadership perspective, I think is crucial, and because that will help you grow into the next step and the next step and the next step after that.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew, if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, to just type them into the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them in real time as Scott works through the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So there are 6 management styles that have been identified in the literature, and actually as you see in daily life, there's the directive manager, gives direction. There's the visionary that talks about the vision and helps people come with them. The affiliative, democratic, pace setter, and then the coach. My favorite by far is the coach, although there's a purpose for each of these management styles depending on the situation. So there's not just one style that works for every situation. For instance, if we go to the coaching style and the building's on fire, we're not looking to get people's opinions and ideas on the best way to get out of the building. The directive style certainly works better in crisis situations. I need you to do this. You dial 911. You do this, and that sort of thing. So while coaching is my favorite, it's certainly not the only style that I'm going to profess is what's necessary in becoming a manager. So the understanding the roles and responsibilities. This is a big piece, and it's the first thing that should, in my mind, should take place when you're getting that role. And here's a little worksheet that we use with our clients, and it's to recognize and reflect on your own journey. Why is that important? It's important because you see that the people that you are now coaching, managing, leading below you probably going to have some of these same areas of struggle, and recognize that they are not going to be as good at this as you are. You've had practice and training and worked on it. In fact, that's why you got promoted, because you were pretty good at the thing. There's a story that I like to tell. I was a college baseball player and pretty high at a pretty high level, Division I, and made all kinds of all-American kind of teams, things like that. The next year, right after I graduated, I wasn't going to play pro ball, but I went back and I coached at a junior college, and I sucked at it. I sucked at it. Here I am, this high achieving guy, and I'm expecting these freshmen and sophomores to be as good as I was, without the experience, the training, the time, the energy put into that, and the coaching. So this was a big part of my own journey, is to recognize my journey and the struggles that I had within that, and to apply those to other people so that they can see that. So the categories here are the areas of struggle, identifying what was difficult about that for me. What did I do to overcome this? And then most importantly, who helped me? All right. We don't get there alone. We have help along the way, and we don't always take time to recognize that. And why this one's important is because you, as the new manager, and you as the new leader, can be that help to the other people that are below you, or even lateral. So some of your peers that are also new managers, being able to help them in that process. So the first portion is to recognize and reflect on the journey. The next thing that I'd like to do is get people to start thinking about the people that they are managing and or leading, and individuals, and they chart out the strengths and weaknesses of all of them. Right? There's going to be people that have strengths, and then they have weaknesses as well. And if you identify that up front and early enough, you'll know what projects to handle to certain people, and which ones that people need to be coached through so that they can taking those weaknesses and to become strengths. So I like doing this with every person on my team, to kind of chart out their strengths and weaknesses. I don't necessarily share that with them, but it's just my impression of those and things for me to watch out for. I would also meet with my team as soon as I get promoted. First in a group, talking about your vision and how you plan on doing things, and what involvement you need from them in order to get the things done. And then after that group session, I like to do one-on-ones with everybody on the team. And this is very purposeful, and there's a huge reason for that. And it's because these people you used to work with, right? You used to work with these folks, you were peers with them, and now all of a sudden you're the boss. And there's a strange dynamic that takes place. We used to be friends, and now you're my boss. I mean, you don't really necessarily want that. On the other hand, you don't want others to say, oh, he's taking care of Sally because she was his best friend, when they were working together. So there's a lot of things to consider when moving from peer to boss that you really cannot ignore, because no one else is going to ignore them. Your team is watching you and looking at you to see how you're going to act and react to situations, how you're going to treat them, and they want to be treated fairly. That doesn't mean equally, but equitably. So having people treated fairly. So understanding your role, getting that from the person that's going to be rating you, your supervisor, right? What are your expectations of me? How can I fulfill those? What advice might you have for me? And listening to what they say. Your expectations that you're going to have for the people that are working for you become equally as important, but the people that are working for you are going to have expectations of you as well. And that is to be treated equitably. So keep that in mind. All this comes into this process that we call communication hierarchy. And we teach this in every class that we do. I think this is crucial. So there are 6, maybe 7 ways that we can communicate. And my theory on this is that the higher potential for conflict, and conflict being just a difference of opinion, doesn't have to be a fight. Conflict doesn't have to be a fight, but I frame conflict in the form of a difference of opinion. Not everyone sees things the way that I see things. The higher up the possibility for that potential conflict, the higher up you need to go in this communication hierarchy. And the best way to do things is face-to-face. You can read body language, you can see their face, you can see their reaction, you can break down barriers when you're face-to-face with people that you just can't in any other method. So if you know there's going to be a conflict, get in the same room with the person and have a conversation. Below that is the video call, what we're doing right now. This is better than not having it available, because if I'm astute and I have the other person, I can see how they reacted to things that I'm saying. They can see how much emphasis that I'm putting on a particular area based on my facial cues and hand gestures and those sorts of things. So if they can't do face-to-face, I want to do a video call if there's a potential for conflict. Below that is phone call. Phone call can handle a lot of issues, right? You just pick up the phone and say, rather than sending emails back and forth and this change and that change, pick up the phone and work it out, right? It's just so much better than email, which is typically in the business world, what is our go-to? We email people. We email them conflicts. We email them roles, responsibilities. We email everything these days because it's easy and it's fast, and I don't have to deal with the person. Unfortunately, the problem with email is that it is almost always read more negative than you intended to say it. If you had had a face-to-face conversation or a video call or a phone call, it would not have come across nearly as harsh as the email that you wrote. Even if you're trying to write a flowery, nice email, people are going to look at that and rate it a little bit more harsh than they would the phone call. Yet, unfortunately, it is our primary method of communication in business today. And if you look at this communication hierarchy, you'll see it's halfway down the list on what I prefer. Now, here's where I do like email, and that is to memorialize a conversation. Say we had a discussion face-to-face or a video or a phone call, and we came up with some ideas and some thoughts, and you're going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and work through that. I will memorialize that conversation with an email, because people do forget. However often have you had a conversation with someone and their interpretation was different than what you thought it should have been, what you thought you were trying to say? Well, an email is a good way to come back after that conversation and say, okay, so here's the 5 points we agreed on. Boom, 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 right? They either hit back, yep, that's what we agreed on, or no, there's a slight difference here. And that's an opportunity to pick up the phone and walk through the distance. And then back to the email again to memorialize the conversation so that there's very clear instructions and very concise and something you can fall back on. So below the email is text and IM and Slack and that sort of thing. And there'll be some people that will argue with that. They think that Slack or texting is a higher form of communication than email. I don't, but the reason that people think that is because, well, you have my personal information, you have my phone number, you have my Slack account, whatever it's going to be, and you gave that to me. So that's just a higher form of communication than email. The problem with it is they're just too quick of exchanges back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to really get as much clarity as you might want to. If you're having to do that back and forth, pick up the phone. It's a really simple process. Pick up the phone. So below that, texting and email is a carrier pigeon, right? There's not a whole lot below that. sending a message out over a carrier pigeon or smoke signal or telegraph. Yeah, it's meant to be a joke. But however, there's one even below that, and that is to assume. Assume I know what you're thinking. Assume I know what you should be doing. Assuming that you should, whatever is the lowest form of communication there is. And yet we tend to do that quite a bit as well. Well, I thought you were going to, right? Everyone ever hear people say that to themselves? I just assumed that you would, right? And that is just such poor communication if you have to assume. Go back up that ladder. The higher that you need, the higher potential for conflict, difference of opinion, the higher you need to go up in there. Face-to-face being the best. So here we now get into managing people and setting expectations and boundaries, and they go together, right? So here's the expectations are what I'm expecting out of you. And they can have some expectations for you as well. And having that dialogue on what those expectations are, but setting those up front and early, and then boundaries. By boundaries, what I mean is there's a great, it's old now, probably 20, 25 years old. Harvard Business Review say who's got the monkey. And how often as managers, as one of your teammates come to you and say, yeah, I'm struggling with this. Can you handle it for me? You just give them an answer, right? You give them the answer, you take it on, and that's taking the monkey off of their back and putting it on your back. So one of the boundaries that I like to try to set is to make sure that people are empowered to do their job. And by empowerment, meaning I've given them the tools that they need, not the directions, not necessarily the processes, although that may be important from time to time, but the tools that they need to be able to do that job. And when somebody comes to me for help, rather than giving them an answer, my first go-to is always asking them for what they think they ought to be doing. A lot of times you're going to hear, well, I don't know. That's why I'm coming to you. And I'm going to come back and push on them a little bit and tell them that, but I need you to think about this, and I need you to come back. Here's your problem, but I need you to come back with a potential solution. What you think we ought to do. And that's the starting point for empowerment, getting your people to start thinking for themselves rather than just telling them what to do. The whole give a man a fish versus teach him to fish concept comes into play here. So getting people to think through their own issues rather than using you as the fallback, not just taking the monkey off their back for them or providing them a quick answer. The problem with this is it takes time. Sometimes it's just much easier to tell them, just do X, Y, and Z, right? Just do the thing and to go get it done. Unfortunately for that, if you use that approach, they will continue to come back to you for very simple things that they should be figuring out for themselves and helping their own career. So empowering people is not only getting less of you having to do the tactical things, but it is also helping them within their own career because now they're thinking through the process. One of the things I like to do when we set out assignments with folks is a 3-step process. It's actually 4 steps when you think about it, but here's what we need. Here's the task. From who and by when. When I was a young manager, I did not like to give deadlines. I didn't like the by when. I had a very strong, domineering personality. And I thought by telling somebody, hey, it's Friday at 2:00, it's like me forcing it upon them and pushing my will. As I grew, what I learned is that providing deadlines to people is actually giving them a gift. We all work better on deadlines than we do when there's no deadlines. And the gift is, my deadline was usually yesterday. And if I didn't see something by Friday, now I'm getting upset because I didn't set the expectations by giving them the deadline. When you give deadlines, though, you have to recognize and understand that people have a chance to push back a little bit. They'll say something like, well, I need this Friday by 2:00. That's great. You've given me 12 other projects that are all due Friday as well. Can you reorganize these and prioritize these? Which ones are more important because they all can't get done? You have to be willing to accept that conversation with your people. Otherwise, you're going to burn them out, push them away, and get them moving on to a new company. So give the deadlines, but also give them a chance to push back and ask for a reprioritization, a change in deadlines. Is it really Friday at 2 o'clock, or do I have till Monday at 9? Having those conversations with the people. And again, face-to-face or video chat's the best way to have those. But if you have to just do it on a phone call, go ahead and do it on the phone call. Don't just send emails out with, here's what I need from who by when in an email. It's just not received well, right? And you're not going to get the responses as the manager that you want to be, or as the leader that you want to be. Brene Brown talks about when we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. Think through that when you're as the manager, as the leader. When you feel mistreated, it is probably because you have not set your boundaries. Same thing within your family. When you feel mistreated, it's because you've let the boundaries move away. You do need to have expectations for people, but also you need to set some boundaries for yourself. So this is a long one, right? Holding people accountable. And it starts with communicating clearly the task that's expected. Defining the expectations for a successful outcome. Letting people know how this outcome adds value to the organization. Answer the why for them. Not just give me this spreadsheet, but here's how that spreadsheet helps the company work towards the mission or the vision or the thing that we need to do as an organization. So answer the why questions. Then here's the next part. Anyone ever been in a meeting? And I know you're not going to raise your hands here, but you've been in a meeting when someone says, okay, everyone understands their role, right? And everyone nods their head. Yep. And if you have 6 people or 7 people in the room and they all nod their head, yes, they all understand their role, you probably come back with 4 or 5 different solutions by the time the project is due. So what I like to do, instead of asking everybody if they understand, everyone get what I mean? And they all say yes. They always all say yes. What I like to do is ask them to summarize what it is that they're supposed to deliver when they're supposed to deliver it. So Esther, what's your next step? What is it that you're going to be responsible for? When is it going to be? When are you going to have it done? Those kind of questions. That's at the end of the meeting after I've assigned all the tasks to folks, right? So when it comes out of their mouth, you'll get what their understanding of your language is, because we all know this. What I say is not necessarily what you hear, right? We all interpret things through our own filters. But if you get them to summarize what it is that you said, you can either say, yeah, exactly, that's what we need, or you can course correct and say, well, that's not quite what I was talking about. What I was talking about was this. Here's what I think we need. Can you tell me what that means to you, right? Getting into a new dialogue. The downside of this leadership role and this communication is it takes more time, but does it really? Does it take more time to set things up properly up front or to correct the mistakes that come in later? Thinking through that means that I spend a little more time prepping and making sure that people are prepared to deliver based on what I need, the expectations that I've set, rather than their interpretation of the expectations. If there's a difference, ask them again to summarize, because you want to find out that they really understand. Then the next portion is asking the employee, do they have everything that they need? Have I provided you all the tools that you need? Then one thing I like to do is ask at the end and say, how can I help? Really simple. They'll almost always say, no, I got it. It's under control. We can handle this. Or I got it. You know, that sort of thing. But asking people if you can help shows your care and concern, that your willingness and all of that. I'm not saying take on their tasks when you're asking for help, because if someone says, well, I need you to do the spreadsheet for me, then the answer is no. That's where the boundaries come back into play. No, but what I mean by help is your understanding of the process, the time that you have to take it. What else can we do to make sure that this is successful for both of us, right? And then things happen along the line. Not every project's going to get done when it's supposed to be done. And quite often, what happens is that people come at the deadline and they say, yeah, I just didn't get done. I'll get it till Tuesday. For me, that's unacceptable. When you know, if something's due Friday at 2 o'clock, and you know by when the employee knows by Wednesday that something got in the way, they got sick, or they had to take off work, or somebody else made a higher priority project, or you gave them a higher priority project, it's incumbent upon them to communicate early as possible to you. Because if your deadline is real and it's 2 o'clock that you need this thing done on Friday, you have a chance to help provide different resources, whether it's other people, change the deadline, overtime, whatever it might be, to help them become successful. And successful to them, it's successful to them, but it's also getting you what it is that you need. Most crucial aspect in management and leadership is the one-on-one meeting. I've had people argue with me on this in the past and say, well, yeah, I don't really have time for that. We're all busy. We can't take a half an hour a week or every other week or once a month. The frequency is not as important to me right now. And the frequency can be different for different employees. There may be some employees that you have that can handle a once a month one-on-one, and that's probably the best time for them. There's others that might need it more often, which is every couple of weeks. And there's some that probably need it every week. The most critical portion of the one-on-one is that you show up. It's on your calendar. It is a I'm not missing this no matter what kind of thing. Yeah, I've got hit by a truck. I had to miss it. But frankly, it is if you disrespect people by not showing up for the one-on-one meeting, that's on you. Because this meeting is about them in my world, in the way that I teach management. This meeting is about them. So we always start off with every meeting. The purpose of the one-on-one is whatever it is, whatever your purpose is going to be. And things that one-on-one meetings are not. In my world, they are not about task-oriented problems. Those can happen day to day in the management by walking around, going to their desk, seeing people, checking in with them, and those sorts of things. The one-on-one meeting is about them and their needs. What is it that my employees need in order to be successful in this job and in their lives? I'm fine with in their lives portion of it as well. What I want to do during the one-on-one is show that I care about them and their development. Now, I have a list as well, that things that I want to get to. And if we don't get to my list today, that's okay. I can handle my list in the management by walking around process. But what I want this one-on-one to be is for them to offload. What are the things that are getting in your way? What are the struggles that you're having? How can I help kind of questions? And I always provide the employees with kind of a cheat sheet that they can kind of write down their issues, right? And 3 or 4 questions. And I think we have this on our website, John, that we have the one-on-one format that people can get to. If not, send me an email and I'll get you one. But they prepare for this one-on-one meeting by writing out what's important to them for this week or this every other week meeting. And I do the same thing as the manager. I will write the things that are important for me to make sure that we talk about. And if we don't get to my issues this time, it's okay. I've got other times that I can go interrupt them in their day and go find out how they're doing on this task or that task. I don't waste my one-on-one meeting on that. And I know it's a really touchy-feely way of going about things, but if you want people to see you as a leader and want to perform for you, you need to show them that you care about them. This is your opportunity. So the benefit of the one-on-one meeting is to allow your people the opportunity to know that you care about them and their development, and you're there for them to support them with that and show them what kind of support that's going to be. So this is a meeting that if you're not doing it today, do it. It is so vital to get to your leadership capabilities or potential by holding a one-on-one meeting that is focused on the needs of the people that I'm holding it with. Hopefully your manager is doing it with you as well. So here we got some HR functions that end up being associated with, I'm just checking the time here, make sure I don't go long. HR functions that are assigned to the frontline manager, handling employee reviews, talent acquisition, onboarding and training, and then the beginning of termination. You'll probably have an HR professional that's going to work through the termination, but there's a lot on you in getting preparation for that to make sure that is the right thing to do. So not there yet. Okay. So on the employee reviews, again, be prepared and make sure that is a priority and that you do it. there's a lot of discussion these days about how often should employees be reviewed. My answer is daily, at least weekly on the one-on-ones, right? Their reviews, letting people know where they are, how they stand is really important, and not just once a year. So the employee reviews handled once a year, they're great for handing out bonuses and pay and that sort of thing. But if we waited till 365 days to let people know how they can improve and find out what their needs are, we're making a mistake. On the talent acquisition, we spent a whole series on this as well. It may not be your primary function to be hiring people, but it is important for you to get the right people hired as the manager, people that are going to fit in with your team. And whatever the culture is within your organization and then your team, every team has its own culture, right? And to make sure that someone's going to fit in there so that we can get the things that we need out of that. So you are crucial in the talent acquisition portion, and hopefully your organization allows you in that interview process as well. Hiring today is different than it was into this post-pandemic process, and hiring people quickly is needed because they're taking other jobs. But I still believe in the hire slow method and multiple interviews with multiple layers, having the HR person interview, having maybe you interview, having the higher executives interview, and maybe even some of your team, getting to really know the person. We're all grown-ups, right? And we've all probably dated in our lives. And I used to say, hey, I can pull anybody for about 90 days, right? And keep a relationship going. Well, the same thing can happen at work as well. So the more interaction that you can have, your team can have, your organization have with someone prior to the hiring, the better you are, because what's most important to me in this hiring portion is we're hiring for fit and for culture. Most tasks we can train, not all, I get that. Computer coding, engineers, that sort of thing. You have to have somebody definitely with skills. But if they have the skills and not a culture fit, either you'll get rid of them or they'll get rid of themselves if the culture fit's not there. There's a line that I like to use, and it says that you can't pay me enough for long to stay in a job that I don't like. And what is it that I don't like about it? Well, the literature talks about the thing that is the number one reason people leave a position. It's not for more money. It's not because they don't like the company. It's because they don't like the manager they're working for. There's not a fit within the culture of the team. That is the number one reason people leave a company. So you want to make sure that people are going to fit your team, and then you need to nourish that team as well through these processes. So the onboarding and training certainly gets to you. And a lot of people say the onboarding is a day with the HR person. It's not a day, it's a 90-day. It could be a year with onboarding and getting people to recognize who you are, what your needs are, what your team's needs are, who else in the organization is there, all of that. So one of the projects that I, when was running a company for one of my clients that I did when the new hires came in, is that I gave them an outline of the company, a drawing of the layout, floor plan for the company. And their project was within the next week to make sure they know who sits where and to find out something about that person, right? And they were supposed to take notes and just forcing people to have conversations with others. How frequently does someone come into an operation and they feel lonely because no one's talking to them? One or two people always talking to them. Well, this makes it easier because the boss now has asked them to go talk to people about who they are, what's important to them, what their job function is, how many kids they have. I don't care what it is. But by the end of a week or so, I have that new hire come back into me and tell me a little bit about who's who. Maybe put a picture of the person on their little diagram. It just starts creating a more personal bond with the people in the organization so that they're going to want to stick around and want to go through the hard times and all of that. So the onboarding is a process. Here's how we do things around here. Not just here's where the bathroom is and here's the paper you need to fill out. And unfortunately, people don't spend enough time on the onboarding and in fact, the training for folks. Termination becomes a big issue. And I think when people are not performing, there's a process that I like to go through and talk to people about. It is that the first thing is that we need to ensure that there's training, that they know how to do the job they're supposed to do. After that has been done, then it's coaching, walking through what the issues are and why they're struggling, where the problems are going to be that they see. And only then do you start managing after that. And to me, managing is helping people on their way out. Not always. Sometimes we can correct issues with management, but it is holding people accountable. And when they're not, having whatever the carrot and stick things that we use within the organization. And I'm a big believer in the performance improvement plan process. Not everyone is, I happen to be. And one of the reasons is because my performance improvement plan not only tells the employee where they're falling short and the expectations that need to be met within this 90-day period, let's say, is that here are the organization's responsibilities, and in fact, my responsibilities to help you get these things accomplished. So it's not a one-sided document that you suck and here's where you need to improve, although that's going to be part of it. I'm not using that language, of course, but that's going to be part of it. But the second half is, here is the support and the resources that you have from the organization. So there's a lot here, and I know we had to rush through it, and I don't want to keep people long. One of the big things about managing and all the meetings you have, right? Because meetings are a big part of becoming a new manager, is giving people time. I like, if I have an hour-long meeting, I like making it 50 minutes. Give people 10 minutes to reset before they have to get to their next meeting, or in half an hour meeting, I make those 25 minutes. So by setting those deadlines on myself, on a 50-minute deadline, then I'll get everything in that I need to get in that 50 minutes. There just won't be as much fluff as there would be if there were 60 minutes. But if you gave myself 60 minutes, I'd take all 60 minutes to say the same exact thing. So we try to do this in this webinar series as well. So we're going to talk for about 40 minutes and leave about 10 minutes left over for any questions and answers. So that's it for the presentation today. I want to thank you all for participating, for staying on for this long. Open for questions, certainly, whether here, which I'd appreciate. If somebody has something they want to ask, go ahead and do that now, or send me an email, scott@leadtogoals.com. Happy to answer anything that you want. We also do a podcast. It's called the CEO Podcast, which is conversations with entrepreneurs about opportunity. And we found out that our audience for the CEO podcast is not the CEOs, but it is the aspiring people. People are aspiring to get to the next level. So we talk a lot about leadership and communication on that, and a lot of free content on our website as well. So please don't hesitate to jump in, ask questions, go to our website, go to our social media, hook up on LinkedIn. All of that stuff is important. And then listen to the podcast and let us know what you think. So any questions come up? I'm not reading the chats, but John, you saw some in the chat, hopefully?
Yeah, we had one question here. Somebody sent over to me, wondering if there are any good books that they could read to learn more about becoming a better manager.
Yeah, there's a lot of good books. Usually the books that I'm going to recommend in something like that are very digestible, not simple, but easy to read, right? They're not bogged down with a lot of academic literature and all of that. So the first one is by Julie Zhao, Z-H-U-O. It's called The Making of a Manager. And she talks about her experiences in working with a tech company and the issues that she's dealt with. And she's a very people-centric person as well, even in the tech industry. So that's one I like. There's another one. It's produced by the Gallup organization. It's called It's the Manager, Jim Clifton and Jim Harder, and much more tactical in nature than Julie's. Julie's more storytelling, and this one is a much more tactical book. And then one of the classics is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I think every manager should read that. So Patrick Lencioni wrote this several years ago, and it just talks about how dysfunctional teams operate, and then gives you clues on how to make them less dysfunctional. So there'll be 3 really quick that I'd recommend. And if you didn't catch that, we'll put these in some kind of an email and shoot it out to everybody as well. Anybody from the field?
Hey, Scott, I'm gonna make sure that everybody knows that I did put the link to register for our next presentation, which is coming up next month on the 15th,
Okay.
For influence and persuasion.
Okay.
And looks like we have another question here. My company holds a lot of meetings. Do you have any advice to make these easier for people to tolerate?
Yeah, I think one of the things that when I go into an organization and work with them on the organizational structure, one of the things that I hear all of the time is, "Oh, our company has too many meetings." And as I dig in and I find out, no, they don't have too many meetings. It's just that their meetings suck. They're just not very well done. So we've actually created a mini ebook that we can hook you up with a link to as well to get this, probably 15, 16 pages on tips and structure on how to make a meeting purposeful. A few things that I'm to just tell you off the top of my head. The first one is invite people that need to be there and disinvite those that don't. Free up the time of the people that are just sitting there not necessary for this meeting. Second one is, in my organization, a meeting is about collaboration. It is not a report, me reporting to people on things that have happened or things that are sometimes things that are needed maybe. But if you have a report, just send me a report. I can read a report and all my employees can read a report. A meeting to me is necessary when we need to collaborate on ideas. People where you're stuck, things that you can do to move. Gave one earlier, which is make your meetings a little bit shorter. So a 30-minute meeting, which used to be a 30-minute meeting, make it 25 minutes. Give people a time to get ready for their next meeting and get prepared for that. An hour meeting, we try to do in 50 minutes. Send out an agenda, letting people know what the meeting is going to be about. And I will start every meeting with this. The purpose of this meeting is, and give them whatever the purpose is. The expected outcomes are, whatever those are. The process we're going to go to get there will be the decide how to decide concept. If this is going to be, I'm going to make the decision, I'm going to make the decision with your input, we're going to vote on it, or we're going to collaborate till we come up with an answer, right? Those are the four basic ways of making some decisions. So if you have meetings like that and you get people engaged, then they will not dread coming to your meetings because things are happening in that meeting. It's not just another doldrum meeting. So anyway, there's lots of other tips in the ebook. And if you want that, send me an email, scott@leadtogoals.com. Be happy to get you a link that you can download that ebook for free.
Scott, we had another question here asking, what is your advice for remote managers to have the same influence and impact as managers who are present in the office?
It is more difficult because the management by walking around is a little more difficult. But I still think that we should have regular gatherings. So I like the daily huddle, which is we get together for 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of the day, talk about the issues that are coming up for the day, what things need to get done. So a little face contact and using Zoom or some other video format to do that, making sure that people's cameras are on as well. To me, that's critical. Not everyone believes in that either. They say, well, yeah, sometimes they don't have the right space. Well, in my world, if you don't have the right space at home, we probably shouldn't be working at home, right? I like to see the video on so that I can see the level of engagement, not to see if people are texting and all that sort of thing, but as we're talking and as other people are talking, watching their facial reactions and seeing who's really got a question that they're not quite asking. A little bit different than if I'm holding a meeting in a conference room. In a conference room, people will just blurt out answers. Often when we're together, they'll just start talking. 2 or 3 people can talk at a time. On a Zoom meeting, you can't do that, right? You can't talk over each other. It just doesn't allow for that. So what you'll find in a Zoom meeting or Teams or any of the other video things is that people are more hesitant to speak. They will sit back and wait. They're being polite. That's really what they're doing. So what I found, and I don't do this in person, but I found a way to call on people. And the people that I call on are the ones that are reacting. If I see, because the camera's on, I can see a facial reaction to something that was said. I could say something like, hey, Emma, what are you thinking here? help me understand, engage them by having to draw out their questions. So you'll see even on this meeting with we're asking for people to have questions, and lots of people do, they're just not asking them, right? Because everyone's being polite. They don't want to jump in and get cut off and all of that. So same sort of thing happens in a Zoom meeting. So the daily huddle. The other thing that I do is Tom Peters talks about management by walking around. If you can do that in an office, great. You can't in a remote scenario, but I can certainly check in with people throughout the day. Whether it's on a phone call, probably the easiest way to do that. People will text and email because it's simpler. I just pick up the phone, give them a call. They'll answer it if they can. If they can't, they'll know at least that you're trying. Leave a voicemail saying, hey, this is Scott, just checking in, making sure everything's okay. Anything we need to talk about. If you have something, I'm free at 2:00 this afternoon if you want to give me a call, those kind of things. So I think engagement is even more important when we're remote, because we start feeling distant, because we are. Your employees start getting lonely because they're not having that interaction at the coffee pot or the water cooler or whatever that they used to have in the office. So I still say that you need to go out and be proactive in reaching out to the people that are working for you, more so than you would have to if you're in the office.
All right, Scott, we have another question. It's actually a two-parter here. So the first part is, what other questions can someone ask during training and onboarding of staff to help them get more involved with the company? And then the follow-up to that is, what is a democratic and a pace setter management style look like?
Yeah, okay. Let's start with that. The democratic management style is when we get together and we all decide together, right? That's just, I don't recommend it for a lot of things. I recommend collaborating enough and to get to consensus when we can. I don't recommend voting on things. So that when you think about democratic style, I don't say, hey, let's vote on everything and the majority wins. I don't think that's a good way of doing things. But a democratic style does more collaboration. A pace setter is the person that got hired because they were really good at putting widgets together or whatever it is that they got done. And they set the pace on the expectations. Think about the story I told about when I was a baseball player, right? And then tried to become a coach. I was the pace setter type coach. It was not effective for these young men that I was coaching because they were a few years younger, not quite as mature, hadn't had the experience. And for them to live up to those expectations was difficult. A pace setter can be good in things because you know what is possible. And you can try to hold people to higher standards and get them to commit to higher standards. So the pace setter is the expert that wants people to be equal to them or what they were. The first part is what? Say that question again, John. The first question.
Sure. Just 1 second here. Let me pull it back down. Okay. What are other questions that a manager could ask during training and onboarding to help staff become more involved with the company?
I love this one. So one of the things that I like to do as a human, let alone a manager, is identify the issue, whatever the issue is that we're dealing with, come up with a potential solution, right? It's not, we need to do this and we need to do it now. It's, hey, I have an idea. What if we blah, 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 whatever it is, right? To come up with a potential solution and then always follow up with this question. What do you think? Right? So that what do you think idea gets people engaged and they see that potential solution as potential, not a demand, which leads to empowerment and helps them think, and which is what you want out of people. You want people thinking and coming up with new and novel ideas, fresh ideas, things that are new, and not just telling them the answer. So there's another book that I really like. It's called Humble Inquiry by Edgar. And Humble Inquiry, what I like about it is the subtext. The subtitle of it is The Gentle Art of Asking and Not Telling. And that's my management style, is to ask rather than tell. Again, there's times where you need to be the directive person. Building's on fire, you call 911, you get these 3 people and get them out that door over there, fine. But in most cases, that's not necessary and in fact, disempowering. So I want to ask more questions, listen to their answers, challenge their answers. It's fine. And allow people to challenge my answers as well. So asking and not telling is probably what I would suggest. And what kind of questions? What do you think? That's my favorite. What do you think? Okay.
That's all the questions we have for right now.
I got one here. I got a direct, I don't normally look at the chat, but I'm happy to get a direct message from Emma. Often people want to be empowered, then aren't happy once they're empowered. What's your top 3 tips to unlock empowerment so teams really enjoy being empowered? I don't know that they don't want to be empowered. I think when people struggle is when they're being held accountable, right? And it's a matter of how they're held accountable is what the issue becomes. If it is, sorry, Mr. Anthony, I
muted it.
Okay, got it. So top 3 tips to unlock empowerment. 1 is to ask, not tell. My favorite, right? What do you think? 2, not take the monkey that they're trying to hand you, right? Put the monkey on your back instead of their back. So someone comes to me with a problem. First thing I'm going to do is say, what do you think? Just go right back to that. What do you think we ought to do here? And not accept the answer that says, I don't know. Well, if you had to make a decision, then what would you do? And leave space for dead air. That's fine. So what people want is to feel valued. When you spend time listening to their answer, pondering that answer, even challenging it, that's fine. Not out the bat. I don't want a whole bunch of yeah buts. That won't work because of, right? Follow that up with another question. If they give me something that doesn't sound right, help me understand how that might work. Right? Another good question to ask people. Help me understand, rather than why would you say that? We want to get to their why. We want to make sure that we understand what their why is, the reason they brought that up, but we don't want to ask the question why. Why sounds very accusatory. Anytime I say why to someone, it feels like they're less than. That's just how people react to that question. You can get to their why by asking open-ended questions like, tell me more, help me understand. Can you describe how that would work? They have to think through that answer before they give it to you, and you'll start getting down. Now, there's a process called going down to the 5 whys, and I think that might be a little overkill, but if somebody's given me an answer, I will think of another question to get them to ask a little bit more about whatever key word that was in their first answer. So I asked them a question, and can you tell me a little bit more about this thing? And I'll be watching, I'll pay attention to how they're reacting. When they're telling me about the thing, there's going to be some key word in there that they're going to react to. I'm going to see it in their eyes, I'm going to see it in their mouth, I'm going to see it on their face somehow, or their body language in some way. And they'll say, huh, that's interesting. I never saw it like that before. Can you describe? And then boom, 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 keep going down the list. But the more you seem interested in their ideas, the more empowered they are going to feel. That doesn't mean they're going to be right. It doesn't mean they're going to have the final solution. It's not going to be the perfect answer, but it does a few things. 1, it lets them know that you care about what they're thinking. And 2, it might bring up an idea that's a little bit different, and we can provide some synergy. We can get some creative thought process between you and I, or our team, or whatever, by listening to those answers. So I think listening is a key aspect of becoming a manager, rather than just telling people what to do.
Hey, Scott, we had a request. Could you list the 3 books you recommended earlier?
Sure. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's the Manager. Jim Clifton is the guy that did Strengths Finders as well. So kind of a popular guy. And then The Making of a Manager by Julie Zhao, Z-H-U-O.
I just added those into the chat box for everybody.
Great. Any other questions from anybody? All right, we're within 5 minutes right now. I want to give a plug again to having you all link, if you're not a direct, a first link on LinkedIn with me, please invite me into your network. We share a lot of content on there. For those of you that listen to podcasts, check us out on the CEO podcast. You can find us on all the major places, but if you just wanted to go to our website, the ceopodcast.net is a way to do that. And again, any questions you might want to ask, pick up the phone and call. I'm not always going to be able to answer the phone, but we've got voicemail here. It works. Or you can send me an email and ask some questions, and I'll get back in touch with you. Probably pick up the phone and call you, unless it's just a quick email. What's the name of that book again? That sort of thing. So I might reply in that way. But if there's no other questions, I appreciate everybody's time, and I would love to hear from you where your struggles are, where you might need help, where you might go for help. All right. I will stay on for another few minutes if anyone has anything, but that's the end of today's presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, Scott.
Hello.
So you did mention that once you go into a meeting, that's how you're gonna take the cadence of the meeting.
Yeah.
Can you repeat those things?
So I start with the purpose of the meeting is, the expected outcomes are, the process we're going to follow is. That's the start of the meeting, but that's really not the beginning of the meeting. The beginning of the meeting is sending out the agenda in advance so people know what we're meeting about, and so they can be prepared for that meeting and not just show up. Does that help?
Thank you. That's perfect.
Okay. Again, if anybody has any questions they don't want to ask out loud, shoot me an email. I'm happy to engage.
I put your email in the chat box, so it's there for anybody that wants to grab it.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great week, and let me know if I can help.